Rachel Holt for Nesson.com. Thanks for tuning into our fantasy football podcast. I'm here with Adam Rank of NFL Media. Adam, thanks for joining us.
No, the pleasure, as always, is on this side of the phone.
Adam, if people are listening to this fantasy podcast, that means they're probably in the fantasy playoffs.
Woohoo!
So we owe them a congratulations. Very, very exciting. I moved on in two of my leagues, but in my other league, where there is the most smack talk and a win has the highest impact on my overall well-being, I suffered a close defeat in Week 13. And out of all the people to blame on my roster, I'm looking at Drew Brees the most. He didn't do anything for me. Yep. What was up with the quarterbacks last week? They cost me a big win.
That is so awful, because I always refer to that as the league of record, where you have that one league that means the most to you, and it's when you're out at the bars or wherever watching the games on Sunday, you should really only be cheering for one team. Like that should be, I mean, obviously the team that you're a fan of, if you're a Patriots fan or whatever, but like your one fantasy team, because part of it is because I work here in the industry, so people are like, oh, in my celebrity league where I'm going up against Michael Rapp. It's like, shut up. I don't care. What's the league you care about the most? And that's the one you can cheer for. And if you got Antonio Brown in that league and he scores, then fine, go ahead and let out a roar. But yeah, I think a lot of people were stung by quarterbacks, and to think that you went into that game at home where Drew Brees is so amazing, and it didn't pan out for you. I don't know what to tell you other than better luck next year.
10 big points in the Yahoo Sports League. 10 big points. Heading into Week 14 with all of our trust issues at an all-time high here, is there any quarterback we can rely on to get us this fantasy championship? And when I say we, definitely not me anymore, but the other people out there.
There's nobody. It's done. Everybody's over. No, the one quarterback who really stands out to me, who I really like this week, and I feel bad because like now I'm too apprehensive to like I've been burned on the stove. I don't really want to reach for anything. You know what I'm saying? It's like I don't want to recommend anybody. I just want to go crawl into a hole because after last week, I'm super scared. I don't want to go on. Like I thought it was everything was fait accompli with Drew Brees, but the one quarterback I'm looking at, and I've had this problem, and I'm with you, Rachel, is like I have this, I know, after I just went on a huge rant about like, you can only care about one league, but in this one league, I did have Drew Brees, and so this week, you know, I had picked up Drew Brees because I looked at his playoff schedule. You're like, okay, he's got a home game against the Bucs in Week 16. He's on the road against the Bucs in Week 14, and you're like, oh, that's going to be perfect. Like, that's going to be one road game where he's going to be fine. The only problem is that the Bucs defense has been amazing over the last couple of weeks, knocking off teams like the Chiefs and like that one squad, Seattle, and then they went on the road and beat San Diego. So now you look at Tampa Bay, and you're like, oh, this isn't as fun anymore. That's a good defense. So you look at Drew Brees, and if you survived last week, I think it would be better for you to flip and go with the quarterback on the other side of the football and go with Jameis Winston, who has been pretty amazing over the last couple of weeks as the Buccaneers have really turned it around. He's been a key part of that. I like the matchup against the Saints. We saw what Matty Stafford was able to do to them. I think Jameis hasn't been turning the ball over. He's got Mike Evans. He's got Cameron Brate. So he's got great options. So that would be one quarterback I would feel as comfortable as you can feel with quarterbacks at this point of the season.
It's tough out there. As far as overall advice as we get into this playoff stretch, we have to approach these games differently. It's less about the player and more about the matchup. Like you said, it might not be a Drew Brees who we want in there. It might be a guy who we wouldn't normally pick. We might have to make some decisions that our heart disagrees with. So what is your overall advice for fantasy owners as we head into the playoffs?
You know, I really still believe, though. I know everything's magnified and it's 1 week and it's one and done, but you really you can't play scared. You just got to kind of trust your instincts, trust your gut, and just go with the players. I don't want to be the guy who's just like, just go with who got you there, because that's kind of dumb. Like, you don't want to – like Rashard Matthews is a perfect example. Somebody who's been amazing for you down the stretch, and you look at – and you see him going up against Denver, and you're like, I can't start this guy. Like, he could possibly be shut down. Like, I look at that matchup, and I'm like, nope, not playing him, and it sucks because he's really been my number one receiver, you know? And so it's disappointing. So you got to bench somebody like that. But it's weird, though, because I wouldn't bench Marcus Mariota, because I feel like he could probably still throw 2 touchdowns, because he's thrown 2 touchdowns in a game for 8 consecutive games, which is the second longest streak next to Dan Marino, who did it 10 times in 84. I still like Mariota, but it's like, okay, but one of those touchdowns will probably be to like Delaney Walker. One will be either going to Taylor Lewan on a gimmick play, or else like Derrick Henry will come in and he'll dump it off to him, something crazy. So, but somebody like Rashard Matthews, you got to kind of avoid. So, you don't want to play too scared, but you want to play smart, and just kind of balance out between the matchups and just, starting great players. Like a great, for instance, might even be tonight with Michael Crabtree. I was pretty excited about starting him. I know that Marcus Peters will be on him at least 50% of the time, but you know what? Kansas City has given up a lot of air yards and everything. And then you see the reports of the weather and everything, and I've been going back and forth, and I'm like, well, I could start Crabtree, or I could take the eye in the sky, whatever the phrase is. Go with like Tyler Lockett, and then I'm like, what am I doing? Like, Crabtree gets a ton of targets. Like, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I don't want to sit there. If he goes out and gives me 4 points, I understand it's not great, but it's not the end of the world. And I would rather have that than have him catch 2 touchdowns or do something that he's capable of doing because he gets targeted so much. So I'm still going to go with him.
Sometimes we overthink things.
Right? Yeah, you got to find that balance. Like, it's so easy. It's so easy to talk you out of things, and especially in the playoffs, because it just feels more magnified. But you're like, look, you've got your good players, just go with them. If it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. What can I tell you? That's the nature of the business. There can be only one winner, and hopefully it's you, though. Well, not you because you're out, but somebody else.
I'm a loser, and you're still listening to the podcast, so that says a lot about you as well, still tuning in.
Well, if I can say something, too, like in my league of record, I should have put this out there at the beginning when you were telling your story. I won last week, but still ended up not making the playoffs, and it's crushing. So, again, I've now had to rely on lesser leagues where, like, no, this league means a lot to me, but you're like, yeah, I'm with you.
Now, are you not in based on points or based on wins?
Combination of both. Like, it's a pretty competitive league, and we had 3 people who had awful teams, like somebody who drafted Gurley first or something crazy like that. Like, there were 3 teams that were awful, so 2 of us were 7-6, and we missed, and I'm like, one of us is going to miss the play. Actually, there was like a glut of 7-6 teams, and I don't even know what the tiebreakers were. And to be perfectly truthful with you, I know I should be promoting NFL.com fantasy, but I play on Yahoo, so I don't know what the tiebreakers were, and I'm like, whatever. I just looked at it, and I looked at my team, and it was kind of a smoke and mirrors team that had been stung by losing Keenan Allen and one other guy. I think it was Sammy Watkins was my 3rd-round pick or something like that. And it just I was looking, and I had Rashard Matthews, and I'm like, I'm probably not going to win anyway, so whatever. I didn't kick up too much of a fuss.
It's tough out there, and the thing for you is you're a Bears fan as well. So not only in the fantasy world does it hurt, but in the real world, when you're watching the games on TV, it stings extra hard. Here in New England, we have the benefit of watching a team that's 10-2. So even if you're out in your fantasy leagues, we have this to fall back on. But I
don't like the way that the tone has changed here all of a sudden.
I'm still salty from that loss. I'm going to be salty all week. I don't know if you can tell. But a lot of people are devastated by the season-ending injury to Rob Gronkowski. If you're playing for a championship, though, there is no time to mourn this loss. You must get over it. You must find a tight end who is going to put up some big points. For you, who are some tight ends for Week 14 in this crucial game?
Well, I found it amazing that I saw Cameron Brate available in a few leagues and was just kind of shocked because he's been pretty consistent. He's probably the number 2 guy behind Mike Evans. We talked about him earlier just a moment ago. So if he's available, I think that would be the first guy that you want to go out and add. And then otherwise, looking at some of the matchups, I think Ladarius Green has kind of emerged. The Steelers have been looking for a number 3 option behind Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown to really step up, and nobody's been able to do it, be it Sammy Coates or Eli Rogers or Marcus Wheaton or anybody. Ever since Martavis Bryant was out for the season, nobody's been able to really consistently fill that number 3 role, and last week they went heavily after Laddie Green, and I could see that magic continuing this week against the Bills. The Bills have really struggled over the last kind of like about since week 8, I think it is, because they've been allowing close to 30 points per game. And what's interesting to note about the Bills is that they're actually worse at home. They're giving up an average of 26 points at home opposed to 21 on the road. So it's a pretty good matchup for the Steelers. I think they could be running the ball more, but I think they're still going to try to get Green involved. So if he's available, I'd go grab him. If you're playing in really competitive leagues where a lot of these guys are snatched up and you have no hope of getting somebody like the two aforementioned players, then Lance Kendricks of the Los Angeles Rams would probably be one of the most realistic options. The Falcons rank dead last against the pass. This is a great opportunity for rookie Jared Goff to go out there and sling the ball. And he really doesn't throw the ball downfield too much. And I would say that Kendricks is probably the number 2 option behind Kenny Britt. So I would go grab him. He seems like probably the most realistic option.
Another question about the Patriots for you. What do we do about this guy, Malcolm Mitchell? This is a guy we've talked about before. We talked about him last week. He's done a lot in the past 3 weeks, including 3 touchdowns in 3 games. Last week, in the absence of Rob Gronkowski, he was targeted 10 times by Brady. However, this week the Pats are going up against Baltimore's pass defense. That won't be easy to go against, even for a quarterback like Tom Brady. So is Mitchell worth a start in Week 14?
You know, it's a tough one. Without seeing somebody's individual roster and really looking at who they have, who he's choosing between, if you're looking at somebody like Malcolm Mitchell or like Quincy Enunwa, then of course you would go ahead and start him. But if you have some pretty good options, I would probably stick to some of the more established guys, because one of the great things about Tom Brady is that he spreads the ball around, and then when they game plan for somebody, they try to just figure out one weakness, and then they hit it over and over again. So it could be Julian Edelman, maybe Danny Amendola, Chris Hogan. Martellus Bennett is going to have another breakout game at some point. So there's a lot of different options. I'm really curious to see how New England is going to approach this, because it feels like they're not going to be able to run the ball on them, which could mean a lot of opportunity for Dion Lewis to catch the ball out of the backfield. And it's just going to be a tough matchup for the Patriots, because I think it's the Ravens kind of own the Patriots, because I think Tom Brady only wins against them about 70% of the time, which for most teams that would be great. Like, we beat them 70% of the time, it's awesome. But when you're talking about New England, when you say like, oh, we just beat this team 70% of the time, it's like, ew, really? Like, that seems weird. Like, that team really does well against you. So it's one of the few teams that does better than a 30% clip against the Patriots, which is like, I don't know. That's like always beating the Browns, or so. I don't know. So it's a tough matchup. Like, I even look at Tom Brady, and I'm like, do I want to start him? Like, he's thrown 11 touchdowns against them, excuse me if I'm getting the numbers incorrect, but it's not like he's very prolific against this team, and it could be a shorter game, a lot more, grinding the clock or trying to stretch that out and try to make this game shorter. I could see the Patriots winning about 17-13, 17-12, let's make it, because Tucker will kick 4 field goals, because they're not, let's be honest, they're not scoring a touchdown against the Patriots. But it's going to be a tough one, so I don't know if we're going to get a big prolific fantasy day from the Patriots, and then trying to figure out who from the cast of characters is going to be the one who scores. It's a tough call.
Well, Malcolm Mitchell was available on the waiver wire. You have me second guessing if I want to start him or not, but the fact is that I've had an unreliable wide receiver 2, so I picked him up. And this was this week after I knew I was already out of the playoffs. I saw a poll on Twitter when you were asking everyone whether it was a fair thing or not to go to the waiver wire even when you know you're out of the playoffs.
Yes.
Your sole purpose is just to go after whoever you're playing and ruin their chances. Am I a bad person for doing this?
Who are you ruining? Is it like your brother?
No, it's just someone in the league who I've never met before.
You know what? I would see in these instances. I would be cool. I would wait till Friday. If Malcolm Mitchell is still the thing that I would say, and what I was trying to get across here, is that people who are working the waiver wire, like, you're out of the playoffs and you're putting in waiver claims, because odds are if you're not in the playoffs, the way most leagues are set up, you have first crack at waiver position. But I feel like once the waiver priority is over, then you can go after it. If it's just a free agent that nobody's picked up, then like, fine, yeah, you're playing to win. That's totally cool. You can go pick him up right now. If nobody's put in a waiver claim for him right now, then it's too late. Then it's like you really don't need him, so it's fine. Yeah, it was really those people who were like, I'm out of the playoffs. Like there was like for instance was somebody who had Tom Brady and was eliminated from the play. Like he was 2-10 or 2-9. Like he's not making the playoffs. So he picked up Kirk Cousins just so other people couldn't pick him up. Like what do you do? Like, I get that you want to play spoiler. You should always play a complete lineup. You should always put in a competitive lineup. Don't leave any empty gaps or anything like that. But doing just spiteful pickups like that just to be a jerk, it's like, it's not cool, you know? Especially if you're not like super close or anything, because in my league of record, it's a group of guys who we're all from the same hometown, and it's really split because there's four of us who grew up on a street called Applegate, and so we kind of like band together a little bit. Like people, like anytime one of the four of us, because I'm an Applegate guy, anytime one of the four of us makes a trade, like there's always screams of collusion. But there's a set of twin brothers. And, like, those guys are always, you know, we always feel like it's fishy if those guys make a trade. And then there's, like, three other guys who went to Corona Junior High and not Rainey. And, like, so there's little divides, like, little, like, cliques within this whole thing. So there's always shenanigans going on. And there's a guy, like, there's always one person you want to beat. And so if you're really doing it spitefully, like it's your brother or it's, like, not your best friend, but, like, your best frenemy or somebody like that. Like, somebody you grew up with and you're like, you know what? Brent started dating my girlfriend in high school after I broke up with her, so you know what? I am picking up Malcolm Mitchell. Like that kind of stuff is funny, but just to do it, I don't agree with. But I'm going to say in your situation, go grab Malcolm Mitchell. Everybody had a fair chance at him. Now you're free to go at him.
Well, I should say, going off of that, in Week 13, I was playing my boyfriend. He was out of the playoffs already. I did have a chance. I asked him to throw the game, and he wouldn't do it. And I don't think our relationship will ever be the same.
It's over. Like, first of all, it's over. And second of all, you lost. That's why Drew Brees ended up with 10 points, because you asked your boyfriend to throw the game.
It was the fantasy karma coming back to get me.
I like him, though. I like that he didn't. That says a lot about him. A lot of good things about him. I think that's hilarious.
Says a lot about the status of our relationship. That's what I think.
That's good, though. You guys feel comfortable with each other. I think that's a good sign.
That's one way to put it. And a team that's opposite of the New England Patriots, the Cleveland Browns. These poor guys. They play on Sunday at First Energy Stadium against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 4-7-1, so they're not doing too great themselves. I refuse to believe the Cleveland Browns are going to go winless this year because they have some bright moments in some close games, some good players on the team. So RG3 is getting the start for the Browns after suffering a broken bone in Week 1. Is this the week, Adam, that the Browns can get their first win of the season and save themselves from historical embarrassment?
You know, it really feels that way, but now that everybody's kind of jumped on board with, like, this is the week, then it kind of puts me the other way. Like, I feel like if Cleveland breaks through over the last month here, these final 4 games of the season, it's got to be one that nobody's really thinking of. And for the Browns, I think the most fitting thing for them would be to, like, beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh, but I don't see that being realistic. I do think instead they're going to get their – I bet they end up beating the Chargers in Week 16. Like, that seems like the one that they'll come through, because people will – like, if they lose this game – people will completely write them off and be like, well, it's never going to happen because they're not going to beat the Bills, the Chargers, or the Steelers. And so then they'll end up beating San Diego, and that'll be the one. Because it's got to be a surprise. And now it's not enough of a surprise. And the bad thing for me, though, Rachel, and I got to tell you this.
Yes.
At the beginning of the year, I made a rather bold prediction where I said the Bengals were going to be 4-12 this season. And if the Bengals do win this game, which they should, I am going to have to go apologize to Bengal Nation. I hate saying Bengal Nation. There's really only one nation. It's Raider Nation. It's their nickname. No, but people can't rip it off. It's like, oh, that's the new immaculate reception. You're like, no, there's only one immaculate reception. There's only one nation. It's Raider Nation. Sorry, Patriot fans. I'm sorry. You can be Patriots Universe or something. Do whatever. It's like you don't have to use the word nation. Like find it Patriots country. Like whatever. Find something else. The same with you, Steelers. So find something else to say. So I'm going to have to apologize.
Someone sounds bitter. Not a Bears nation. Someone sounds very, very bitter.
Well, let me say this. There is not. But it seems like everybody out here is from Chicago. If you're ever in the LA area or in the Phoenix area, you'll know like, oh my God, everybody is from Chicago. But yeah, like Fat Tony from The Simpsons, he owns a place out here called Taste Chicago, which is amazing. It's a quick little, I don't know why I'm throwing that out there, but
you're obviously hungry.
Yeah, well that and you're besmirching the Bears, so whatever. My point is I'm going to have to apologize to Bengals fans when they move to 5-7-1 because obviously I would have been wrong about them being a 4-12 team, and so this one's going to hurt me, I think.
Well, it's your fault for making all these bold predictions.
I know.
And we give you credit for that, but you also predicted that Antonio Brown 20 touchdowns on the year. Do you think he can still do it?
It's happening. I don't know. Thank you for bringing up something that's totally going to happen. Yes, thank you. Yeah, he's got this. He's got 11 right now. He's got 4 games left, so he needs 9, 3, 3, 2. Done. Oh yeah, I think that's fait accompli. I'm heading to the window to go cash that ticket already.
You're a bold guy, and that's why we like to take your advice. You go out there on a limb, and I'm rooting against the Bengals now because I want to see this prediction come true. Any other final tidbits, some words of advice as we head into the playoffs in this Week 14 where we need a win?
Just kind of what we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Just, you know what, be smart, don't overthink it. If you've got some really good players, go with them. I understand there's going to be some matchups to avoid. Wide receivers, going up against the Broncos, running backs going up against the Ravens. And then ultimately, you know what? Stick with your great players and just see what happens. I mean, that's what we're doing here. I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's still dependent on what these players are able to come up with. We can tell you the odds, we can tell you how the matchups look, and judge everything like that. But ultimately, it comes down to the players, and hopefully, it works out. Hopefully, we don't have a week like last week where top flight quarterbacks are just going out there and not performing. And that was so crazy. Like, it's almost to the point you're like, I almost want to take a 0. Oh, and I do need to apologize. I should apologize too. I said this on our show this week, and I put it in one of my columns and everything. And the whole deal with Colin Kaepernick, who incidentally I kind of like this week against the Jets. Everybody, I know a lot of people were on Colin Kaepernick. I feel like I was probably the most adamant, and I will take the heat as the most high profile. I don't know. I was the number one Colin Kaepernick supporter, and it failed miserably, and it was awful. And I really should have known better because I was looking back at it. I'm like, oh yeah, Vic Fangio, he was the defensive coordinator of the 49ers. Like, it makes too much sense. And the fact that I missed on that one has kept me up at night this week. I've really been upset about this. I know some people do this stuff and they don't care. And like, whatever, I missed. I'm like, I really feel bad. I know a lot of people were headed to the playoffs, and if you played Colin Kaepernick at the behest of me and it didn't come through, I don't know how I can ever repay you. But realize I'm going to be trying to get better, so I do apologize for that. And for anybody going to the playoffs, I say good luck, and I hope it works out.
That is a very noble apology, but I stand by the fact that you've given us some great advice all season long. So if they were in contention for the playoffs, it's probably because of you. Adam, we thank you for your time. Where can we find you on Fantasy and Friends this week?
Oh, thank you so much. The show will be coming on 6 o'clock Friday evening. No special week. I mean, 2 weeks. Last week it was cheerleader week, which was a lot of fun. But this week it's just week. I don't know, playoff
it's
week,
just
I guess.
You?
It's just me. Yeah, we're just doing some things. But the show's continuing to come along. We're still having a good time. So if you have the opportunity to record it, find some time whenever there's a downtime, whenever there's not a Celtics game or whatever. If you're not watching hot stove coverage, congratulations to the Red Sox for getting Chris Sale. Whenever you're not following up on that stuff and you want to take a moment to watch some Fantasy and Friends, we would certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to watching you.